Aloha and welcome to Talk Story with John Waihe'e as we continue our mini-series called The Green Team. And this is our opportunity to introduce all of you to some of the key members of Governor Josh Green's cabinet. And we have with us this afternoon the Director of Transportation, Ed Sniffen. So, Ed, welcome to the show.
Thanks so
people
much.
are, well, first of all, you look like you're probably the youngest director of transportation that Hawaii ever had. Do you know any? Is that, I don't know, is that true? No, has anybody ever told you that? Or?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think there was another director that was younger than I when he was in the seat. But I'm pretty new, so I'm trying to learn as much as possible, as quick as possible for everybody.
Well, I tell you what, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, where did you grow up, and what is your journey like to become director of transportation? I mean, where did it all start?
It started in Aiea, Hawaii. I was one of 9 kids in our family. We grew up dirt poor, but the great thing about Hawaii is we didn't even know it. So we had a great life, a lot of fun. We grew up with our best friends and worst enemies in the house. Got to fight a lot and hug a lot. So it's great. I mean, great place to grow up. Hawaii has so many things to do that's no money fun. The beaches, the parks, the families, the friends. That was life for us growing
Oh,
up.
fantastic. And where did you go to high school?
I went to Kamehameha. I graduated in 1990 from Kamehameha. Absolutely loved it there. Dr. Chun, when he was the headmaster there, and I always remember this, he always told us we got to make sure we honor the past and prepare for the future. And that stuck with me throughout, making sure we knew where we came from so it helps us know where we're going.
Well, that's fantastic. So all of it, you get to be, how do you end up being director of transportation? I know that you were the deputy director in the previous administration. What
Yeah.
do? You just raise your hand one day, say, I want to be a deputy, and what does it do?
I'm a civil engineer by trade. I started after I graduated from Santa Clara University. I came back home, started working here for a local engineering firm. And then my wife, who's in marketing, decided to move us to the mainland, which
Okay.
just changed my thought process and landscape tremendously. We lived up there for 5 years, lots of opportunity, lots of work going on, lots of money in the industry there. But once we got pregnant with our first son, 5 years of living in the mainland, we decided we don't know how to raise a kid in the mainland, but we know how to raise them in Hawaii. So we decided to come back. Decided to come back home. I went back
Well,
to
you're
work.
talking about your family and how close it was and so forth. I mean, I can see it.
Exactly.
We came home for the same reason, by the way. My wife and I came home. You just want to come home. I mean, this is the place you want to raise your family.
So much roots here, and would be such a travesty for us not to allow our kids to see how great it is to grow up and live in Hawaii. So we had to come back.
So
when I came
now
back, though,
you when you come back, you become what do? You end up and see Governor Ige say, hey, you got an opening at the Department of Transportation,
actually, when I came back home, it was I worked at the same local firm that I worked at prior to leaving, but it just seemed the world seemed so small. So I felt like it was time for a change. At that time, it was during the Linda Lingo administration, and the then director at the time had let me know that he was having some problems in one of the design areas for DOT, and asked if I was interested in coming in to help out there. So I thought, hey, good change in opportunities and everything. I'll try it out. After the first project and the impacts that we saw from that project, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked on public life. Just seeing how much opportunity there is to change the trajectory of Hawaii through small initiatives and projects was just tremendous.
Well, that's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what the Green administration's priorities are for transportation. See, you were deputy director of highways. Now you're director of airports, highways, and harbors. So, tell us about that. That's a huge responsibility. Tell us a little bit about that.
It is. It's really big. And, I got to tell you the story first. I have 3 boys. And when I let them know that Governor Green had asked me, had extended the opportunity to be director of transportation, I shared it with the family, of course, and let them know that I'm thinking about this and I wanted to get their feedback. The 2 younger boys who are juniors in high school said, "Dad, I don't think you should take the job." And I said, "Why not?" They said, "Remember, Dad, in 2015, when you took over highways and you broke the zipper, all of our friends were so upset at us. Now, if you break airports and harbors at the same time, we're not going to have any friends."
So, well, that's a good life lesson in there someplace. I don't know if the lesson was for them or for you, though.
Well, it definitely underscored the opportunities to make sure we move things forward a lot faster than we did in the past. Yet, given this opportunity that Governor Green had given me, not only to look at the infrastructure for airports, highways, and harbors, but also the opportunities that transportation provides. Governor, you know better than most that transportation touches everything.
Right.
And because of transportation, many things in the economy are possible. And everything touches transportation. So any change in the environment impacts those that are on our airports, highways, and harbors. So just huge responsibility for that perspective. Governor Green is very focused on several initiatives, the biggest of which is housing and affordable housing. Definitely energy and food security are up there. Education is big for the governor, and making sure that we're taking care of our quality of life for our local residents here. All big opportunities for us.
So tell us about how Director of Transportation interfaces with housing. I mean, I was going to talk a little bit about airports and roads and everything, but when you brought up the governor's initiatives, I mean, yeah, it seems like the number one priority everywhere is at least making housing affordable for residents. So
absolutely.
What, as the master of our airports, harbors, and roads, what do you do that contributes to affordable housing?
In the past, so every developer who looks at a housing development has to go through a land use condition, right?
Right.
Our land use groups go through their projects, see what their impacts are to the environment and to our roadways, and require them to upgrade facilities in different areas. So they have conditions on their development. And if they don't fulfill those conditions, they cannot open up their developments. Our role in the past was to uphold and make sure that those developers fulfill their conditions, to put the money in to ensure that we don't impact the public. It took a change or an adjustment in mindset for us to ensure that we can start partnering with these developers. These developers have the land. They have the utility connections in that area. They have the entitlements for those areas. So if for them to move forward with more affordable housing is way faster than if the public or if the state got a parcel of land that we can start developing. So we try to partner with the developers now. We look at the conditions of development that they have in order for them to move forward with their housing infrastructure. And we let them know, hey, if we're happy to take on the infrastructure for you, the road improvements that are necessary, because we're really good at that. We can take those on for you in exchange for more affordable housing in your development. So they're already required to put in a minimum amount of affordable housing in any development that's market. So we go in and we work with them to get more affordable housing that offsets the cost of the infrastructure that we would do for them. And as you know, Governor, a lot of those developments are stalled because their infrastructure cannot go forward.
Right.
Developers have a hard time of coming up with that money up front.
But plus, it also helps your planning, doesn't it? In the sense that, one of the problems now, we talked about in a recent conversation, was the fact that there's some flooding going on the highways and so forth. And so it seemed to me in the discussion, the point was brought up that should we repair those roads, or should we look and even maybe move them in a way that which follows where the people actually live, or that kind of an adjustment. So
Absolutely. In the past, land use discussion or land use decisions were made separate from transportation decisions. Now we're trying to tie them back together again to make sure that we start moving the resources in the areas following land use. Your example is perfect. On the north shore of Oahu, between Haula and Kava, there's a 10-mile stretch that's already being eroded by the ocean, and that we know based on science, in 2100, that roadway is going to be inundated by a foot of water. That roadway is 2 feet above the community that it serves. So if that roadway is inundated, we believe that the community is going to be inundated as well. So we could right now knee jerk and say, well, it's going to be flooded, so we're going to raise that road by 6 feet to make sure that that road can still be continuous throughout, even after the year 2100. But if the community near it is also underwater, there's nothing to service there. So we want to make sure that we're moving those funds in the right area to make the decision. Should we elevate the road? Should we relocate the road? Or do we move a road into an area that we know that development will occur to replace those units that are being flooded near the ocean? All tied together.
So these types of things all interface with each other, and it's part of the decision making that you make. Well, tell me, when you do this planning, right now, the obvious question is how does mass transit fit into this initiative, the whole idea of a smarter transportation system?
It's huge. Thinking about the future of Hawaii, when we start looking at the projections and volumes on the highway systems that we have right now, I'll tell you quite frankly, I cannot tell you what the volume and the demand is going to be 10 years out. When the system was first developed 60 years ago, right now, through Waimalu Pearl City Corridor, we projected in 1960 that we would service 90,000 vehicles through that corridor. By the time the highway was built, it was already seeing the 90,000.
Wow.
Now we're seeing 250,000 vehicles through that corridor. So since that time, we under projected at that time. Ever since that time, we've over projected. So we're just in transportation in general. It's not just Hawaii. This is nationally. Transportation in general has a hard time projecting because not everything's linear. Every piece that occurs in the economy, adjusts the transportation needs. I think mass transit's going to be a big disruptor in transportation, and that's the hope as well, to make sure that we can start developing areas around mass transit to ensure that we can minimize the growth in transportation. I will not tell you that rail will eliminate trips tomorrow. I think most of the people who voted for rail voted for it because they want the person driving next to them in the next car to ride rail.
Yeah, but I think there's a kind of dynamic that happens when people actually try it. One of the things, I tell you what, we are going to take a short break right now and come back and continue this really interesting conversation. So, okay, here's our commercial. Welcome back to Talk Story with John Waihe'e and our special guest this afternoon, Ed Sniffen, the Director of Transportation, Master of Airports, Highways, and Harbors. You know, we're just talking about the transportation impact on just everything in Hawaii. And the last conversation where we left it off was on mass transit. You know, I'm going to be going up to DC, and I've made many trips to New York, for example. And it's amazing to me how people adjust. You know, they start off wanting to always drive their own cars and so forth. And then all of a sudden, they find out how easy it is if the system is designed correctly, and how easy it is to let somebody else do the work for you.
Absolutely.
And they switch over. I mean, I got when I was practicing law out of DC, I used to have partners who didn't even own cars. I mean, in town. They owned cars that they drove around their house actually in another state where they would transit in. You know. But so there is that impact. But people seem to overstress, I think, in a sense, that it's all about economic development. You know, we're going to build these shopping centers and all of that, which is good. It's lifestyle changes. But I don't know if they realize how dramatic the change can be in terms of where we live, where we shop, and the rest. You know?
Totally agree. I totally agree.
I think one of your most interesting, a couple of your interesting projects I just got to talk about. When I first met you, he was the deputy director in charge of highways, and you had this passion to bring free Wi-Fi to everybody in Hawaii. So how's that going, and how does that fit in the rest of it?
It's going well. You know, federal highways and USDOT has been adjusting with the times, and COVID had required us to adjust in the way we think of things. From a transportation perspective, in highways and moving into the Department of Transportation, overall airports, highways, and harbors, really our job is to make sure we connect people to the goods, services, and opportunities that they deserve. I mean, that's our job. And prior to COVID, our job was physical. They're either going to walk or bike or drive or catch mass transit. During COVID, it adjusted a bit. People were locked down. So their connections to the goods and services that they needed were virtual. So we spoke with federal highways and we let them know, from our perspective, we got to fulfill that fourth highway now, that fourth area of connection for our public. We got to make sure that those people who are in unserved and underserved communities have the same opportunities that everybody else has. So we're going to connect up our system with fiber to intersections that are parallel to or run into those communities. And because we're going to have an overage of service in those areas, we're going to connect that whole area with Wi-Fi to ensure that those in those communities who don't have the opportunity right now will have the same opportunities to learn, to work, and to connect that everybody else does. And USDOT bought off on it. I mean, they were super supportive of it.
And
so
they funded it?
Yes, they funded it. So they helped us push $25 million into connecting 8 communities. It's going really well, the project.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, and the other passion you had was that electrical vehicles. You know, I remember you bought a whole bunch of cars that are all electric for the Department of Transportation. Tell us what's the future with electrical cars? I mean,
it's twofold for me. The first is related to energy security. In Hawaii, we are totally dependent on fossil fuels that are being shipped in, not only to run our vehicles, but also to run our power plants. We hope to start flipping that. And the Office of Energy is pushing forward on a huge project to do so. But from our perspective, the more energy we can push to clean renewables, like hydrogen, and electric. The faster the conversions for most of our public. And to me, the government has to lead on it, because there's always been two obstacles to converting to clean energy vehicles. First is cost. Electric vehicle is going to cost more than its parallel in a fuel vehicle, fossil fuel burning vehicle. And second is range anxiety. So first, to me, we got to push forward and start converting our fleets to make sure that we start putting up our charging stations throughout our systems, make it easier for everybody. Secondarily, when we do that, when we start pulling in large volumes into the state through our public vehicles, it starts putting manufacturers on notice that Hawaii has that need for electric vehicles, which makes it more available for everybody else in the public to start converting as well. And secondarily, when we start converting out our vehicles, so after 5 years and we change out our vehicles, our electric vehicles now go into the secondary market here in Hawaii. So if people cannot afford to buy a brand new vehicle, they can afford to buy a secondhand Tesla that's in really good condition.
Well, that's really great. Do you see, I've asked this question in a number of places, do you see the growth of electrical charging stations like gas stations are? It's not everybody who can afford to put a charger in their own private garage.
Absolutely.
So is there anything being done with somebody to stimulate that business?
Absolutely. Fortunately, the Biden administration and Congress got together on a funding mechanism that pushed electric vehicle funding into all states. It's called the NEVI program. It kicks out $2.5 million per year to allow us to push forward on 4-port 150 kilowatt fast chargers on our system in 8 different locations. Wow. And once we get those, it's tremendous. And once we get those in, additional funds are available from discretionary grants, competitive grants that allow us to push electrification into different areas as well. So it's going to help us jumpstart our electrification program, definitely.
Okay, the cost of gas is going through the ceiling. So for those of us that don't yet have a Tesla or an electrical vehicle, just quick question. Are we going to raise the gas tax at all? Or is that something that you're anticipating? Or
Not at all. Not at all. We think the Hawaii residents are burdened enough. We want to make sure that we live within our means. So we're making sure we do that. Plus, there's so much money available on the federal side. We're actively and aggressively chasing down as much money as possible on that side.
Okay, we're going to quickly, we only got a few minutes left. I want to jump to airports. Seems like airports has got a lot of money. They're constantly building things, constantly under construction. What are some of the plans for the Hawaii's airports? What's going on?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is to make sure that our airfields and runways are in good condition. You're going to see a lot of reconstruction of our airfields and runways, and sadly, it's going to cause some delays on the flight side. But we're going to try and push it through as fast as possible, working 24/7 on those areas to ensure we get that done. So those airfields are safe and secure. Then we're going to push money into our terminals to ensure that everybody, when going from parking through security and to waiting for their planes at the gates, have the best experience possible. Working with TSA to ensure that those lines are minimized, and working with the airlines to make sure that we are upgrading those terminals so everybody's comfortable in those areas.
Is there going to be an international terminal built someday, or?
Yes.
I know we were thinking of it way back in my day, and it's never really happened.
Yeah, so we're starting up on the construction there. We already built the Mount Concourse that's taking care of the inter-island flights there. That Diamond Head Concourse on the opposite side is going to start up very soon. There's a couple of enabling projects we're going to need to move forward on right away. A parking structure for employee parking, so we can pull all those vehicles off the employee parking lot and start up the remediation for fuel in that area. Once we get through that, we can start building out the new Diamond Head Concourse. That's going to be the international side.
Okay. Now, quickly into harbors. Hawaii is surrounded by water, and yet we're not necessarily the state with the most number of harbors. And so what's your vision for harbors?
So the big push on harbors is making sure that we got to live within our means. The last thing we want to do is increase the cost of goods to any of our residents here. We want to make sure that the upgrades that we're doing on the harbor side not only increase safety, because those harbors facilities are very old, but they also increase efficiency so that we can start bringing down the cost of goods as they come in. We're also making sure that we're starting to connect up to use the levers that DOT has to incentivize more food production locally. We're talking to local farmers to see what infrastructure is necessary at the ports to allow them to bring more goods there, more livestock, more produce in those areas. Is it just water spigots or shade or tented areas or reefers? We're looking at putting more money to those areas to incentivize that kind of production there.
Well, that's great for that side of it. But what about the small boat harbors? Is there anything going on?
Small boat harbors is under DLNR right now, but we're working with them, to upgrade it. There's a lot of potential in small boat harbors, and we're looking at using our expertise to work with DLNR to upgrade those areas. There's a lot of exciting potentials. There's electric planes that land in water that we're looking at potentially using in the small boat harbor area. So, I mean, it's just to bring more money, more opportunity for connection for our residents here.
Well, we got about a minute left, and you're in charge of such a wide range of projects. Is there anything in particular that you really, really feel strongly about?
Yeah, for us, it's affordable housing is the big piece. We're making sure that we push all of our resources into that area to start bringing down the cost to live in Hawaii. And one of the big pieces is going to be rail. I mean, rail is a big investment into affordable housing into the future. So we're trying to work with the city and work with other state agencies to ensure that TOD is built the right way to incentivize more people to live near the rail line or on the rail line and minimize the need for vehicles that are coming through in the future. While we electrify everything, while we're making sure that we push everything towards clean energy. My goal, if we can push all of our fossil fuel burning vehicles into electric, put the load on HECO and have HECO convert to hydrogen quick starts on their plants, and we already can produce hydrogen on Big Island, then we start building out that energy security that we're actually looking for. So that's the push. That's the goal.
Fantastic. And what a great vision. And I really do want to, unfortunately, we just ran out of time. I wish we had another half an hour. Unfortunately, we don't. And thank you so much, Ed, for joining us this afternoon and giving us a sense of the Green Team's vision for Hawaii.
My pleasure. Thank
Aloha.
you.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.